Welcome to the WinEH podcast. This show is focused on empowering ranchers. Whether you're a seasoned rancher or just getting started, we'll guide you on how to use the infinite banking concept as an alternative way to finance your operations. It's a better way to think about money. Join us as we discuss planning for the future, attracting the next generation, and the art of keeping more money within the family. Here's your hosts, Winnie and Lacey.
Okay, welcome in. We have a very special guest today who I actually met just a little over a year ago in San Antonio, Texas, I believe, at the Black Sheep Summit that Mary Jo Ehrman was putting on for her amazing clients. And you were actually Rebecca Undem, or Undem. How do I say your last name?
Undem, yeah.
Undem,
yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I met her lovely self there. She's the executive director of Growing Small Towns and has always been passionate about two things, people and talking to people, which is how she met me because she talked to me. You know, as an inspirational speaker, community advocate, and a host of the podcast, the Growing Small Towns show, she's put her gift of gab to good use. So as a founder and executive director of Growing Small Towns, a nonprofit organization headquartered in her hometown of Oaks, North Dakota, which is only 1,800 people. Holy smokes, I can't even imagine. But Rebecca helps small communities be places people love to call home through programs that grow their human, social, and cultural capital. So she's not one to let people down. Rebecca still lives up to her childhood label of drama queen, but the good kind of drama queen.
Yeah, all
right?
Good drama. All good drama.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So she binges on Netflix shows, coffee, and anything that makes her feel verklempt, right? Her self-declared favorite feeling. And she went against her youthful declarations and married a farmer named Jeremiah, lucky man. And together they have 3 amazing children, Andrew, Carter, and Bryn Lee. They live their small town and they love their small town and they're crazy good life and they just love and get to live there. So, Rebecca, welcome.
Thank you, Winnie. So good to be here. It's always funny to sit while you read my bio or my intro, but yeah, it's all true. I mean, I famously love humans. So podcasts work really well for me. So thank you for inviting me. So happy to be here.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying yes. I think it's always really good to always have an opportunity to share our gifts. And, you know, like your gift is very different than my gift. So the idea today is to really to really use your gift to really help, perhaps give hope and inspiration and hopefully some peace of mind to a lot of the individuals that I choose to work with who are farmers and small town people, even though I live in a big city, right? Because secretly at heart, I want to be living in a small town and in a farm, but this is not the right season of my life to be doing that. And yet, with so much instability going on. I mean, I think that it's a universal truth. There's always what we know for sure is that things are not meant to be stable all the time.
Right.
Yet I think it's like this for me, but as I age, I become more and more aware of different things and how different things have impact. So I never used to, honestly, through my teenage years, and through my early adulthood, I hated politics. As soon as the politics come on, just turn off the TV, turn off the radio.
Yep.
And now today, it's it becomes one of the things that you really pay attention to. I still haven't really I know a lot of people are opinionated about it. I think there's the truth lies somewhere in the middle of all of it. And yet politics does provide an emotional instability among all of us. So I'm inviting you here today to talk about maybe some ideas or maybe how people can create stability for themselves since we can't seem to get it at exterior, from anyone else.
Yeah. Well, let me just first say that I think that's a smart observation. I mean, I think we are living in there's just a ton of uncertainty and kind of chaos. And along with that, division. And so some of the interpersonal difficulty too, right? It's not just the instability that comes with uncertainty. It's also interpersonal. And that makes it extra charged, I think, at least in my opinion. But I guess you bring up a point that I think is really important. If nothing else, there are always things that we can do to kind of quell that chaos and disruption within us. And in fact, that's what we've only ever really been able to focus on, right? Because I'm not in charge of the markets. I voted with my voice, but I'm not in charge of who's sitting in the presidency and along with Congress, like here in the United States. So I think at least that's how we kind of stay ahead of like a total kind of despair spiral, if you will, is to think about, okay, well, what can I do? What can I focus on? What can I influence? What can I control? So I'm definitely game to have this conversation for sure.
Mm-hmm. And so, well, being that you live in a small town and like based on like just the conversations that you have with rural families, right? Like, how do you feel that they're emotionally coping right now?
I actually think right now, politics is charging our climate differently than it has. There's something about this particular administration and just kind of everything going along with it. And so my answer is that it depends, Winnie. It depends on if I'm talking to rural people right here in the Midwest. And again, to not in any way actually stereotype, because I truly don't believe that's helpful. I don't believe it's healthy. But again, I would say it depends. It just depends on if I'm talking to a rural group of people or a rural person that's in favor of kind of this current administration, or if I'm talking to a rural person that's not. I just was in the Pacific Northwest last week. The conversations I had out there were not, again, it's not necessarily that politics is driving the conversation, but to some degree, I think it's driving our overall sense of maybe well-being. It certainly is driving fear or hope. So I think that the answer is it depends. In general, though, I think there is a pretty strong sense right now of just uncertainty with the kinds of federal funding mechanisms that are being just sliced, pulled back. I'm not sure when it was, if it was just announced today, but like the slashing of AmeriCorps is a really big deal. AmeriCorps is an organization that a lot of rural communities, and it's interesting. Again, like I've done local economic development work. And so I think I understand or see the impact of a group like AmeriCorps, not even right in my backyard, but I know where they're going and I know what kinds of projects they're working on. And so I think to see that, it's that question of just like, how the hell are we cutting that? Like, how is that, who is that decision helping kind of a thing? So there's definitely more uncertainty now than there was, I think, no matter which side you're on. I just think the people that are pro this administration are maybe feeling less fearful. And there's more of this sense of like, we just have to ride this out. Like, we know it's going to be rough and it's going to be hard, but that these things are necessary. Almost like that belief that this is a necessary pain for an eventual better outcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does that makes sense,
I think so. So basically, whether you like the current administration or not, things are going to change. And depending on which side of the coin you stand on, you may feel more relaxed than not if you're not pro this administration, right?
Right.
And it really comes back down to, and this is why I really, really love your work so much, is because it's what we do with ourselves. It's what we can do, like, right, with what we can control that actually matters the most. And so I think that something like that you're doing, you've been passionate about for quite some time. So whether it was one administration or another administration, what is like the common thing that you could really, really like just help our listeners really take home in the sense of, making where you are a better place?
Yeah. So I just recorded a podcast. It just dropped on Monday. And so maybe we can link to that. I don't know if you do show notes. We could link to that if people want to listen to it. But I think it's a call to love, Winnie. That's what I think it is. And I think a few things you can ask yourself is like that simple question of, what do I love to do? And what do I feel? You started it out by saying like, that's your skill set. I don't have that. Like that whole idea of what am I uniquely gifted or equipped to offer? And where would I most love to contribute that? and then freaking go do it. Like go and do that. There's plenty of research and plenty of data that supports what happens when we turn chaos, uncertainty, even procrastination, right? Like there's all these things that like can take over and we're not sure what to do. When you actively do something, you activate your body and it kind of starts to regulate your nervous system. That's all true. But then there's also like this extra cool benefit when it's service. So again, and it doesn't have to be like you go out and build a house for Habitat for, it doesn't have to be crazy and like out there, right? If you have those skills, please do those things. That's great. But I mean, it could be as simple as, what's a conversation that you love to have? Like what's a conversation that you would love to have today? And who would you love to have it with? Send them a text and say, meet me for coffee, or let's go for a walk and have a conversation about this. I've been thinking about you, been thinking about this. I would love to talk to you, right? I think that's part of really actively taking control of putting yourself in the way of more things that you love is by actually creating those opportunities. So that's one. A second thing, and this is just like a call to action everywhere, I think, is just what could you do, or what would make you love your community more? And then ask yourself, and again, they seem they're tangential. I'll say that, right? These two things are tangential, but that's the entire reason I'm sitting in a podcast studio that I built. Frankly, it's because there were core things that I missed from my bigger city experience that I wanted. And so I bought a building, renovated a building, and put those things into a building. Now, it's not saying that that's what it looks like for everybody. I understand. I tied my work and my entire professional career up in this too. It wasn't just like I needed a cool place to hang out. It was more than that for me. But love was the driver. Love was the motivator. And then the third thing is simply to look around and what are the things that you do love the most, and what would it look like for you to pour your love on the people that made that thing happen? So if it's a business that you love, if it's just a person that every single time you see them, they make you feel really good, find some simple way to let that person know that they, and the way they're showing up, or the thing that they're offering, or whatever it is, are helping you love your community more. I mean, can you imagine getting a text like that from somebody like, hey, Winnie, I just was thinking about you today, and I wanted you to know that the way, let's say it's the way you smile at me every time I see you in the grocery store makes me love this community more. You make me love this town more. And I just wanted you to know. Doesn't that even it makes me choked up to think about getting a text like that. So that's, I think, a few simple things that we can do. And I think it is all about love.
You know what I love about all of these call to actions, these suggestions, these things that you just talked about, is that it takes picking up the phone, sending a text. I mean, besides the bill that you pay to have that cell phone or whatever it is, but it's very it basically costs nothing but your time. Mm-hmm. And so, because instability is an emotion, and it's just an external thing that happens. And when we feel unstable, we also feel like our desire to operate from a space of survival, the mindset of survival kicks in. But everything, the call to actions that you just talked about, activate something else. It's not survival. It's more in a space of thriving. Right. And without having to really spend a single dollar.
Yeah, it's rooted and it's grounded, and it's almost like, because I'm a big fan, honestly, and I've done a lot of personal work, therapy included, right? To become a person that doesn't quickly gloss over and dismiss pain. That's very, very hard to learn how to sit with pain. I think we're wired to flee from pain. Again, fight, flight, or fawn. That's what happens when we get overwhelmed. But there is something to be said about swapping out a feeling. Because like you said, instability is a feeling. Love is also a feeling. And there's something very powerful about activating that love. I think also in a time when, like I said, I don't get to control what's happening politically other than voting. I could protest, I could do some things. There's definitely activist kinds of activities that we could all do. I'm not diminishing that, but I also think that there is this serious tendency sometimes to let a big, broader narrative destroy the beauty that's right in front of us, or at least diminish or somehow like
disguise or just
obscure it. Yeah, that obscures it, right? And you all of a sudden, you can't see it. And so that's part of my call to action too, is like, just look for it. Like, look for that beauty, look for the love, look for the things. And Amy, honestly, it's so challenging. Like for me, this is heart aching, breaking times. I genuinely love people so much. And so when I am faced with people, well, okay, I'll just give you the very clear example of this. So like I just said, I got back from the Pacific Northwest and I had some incredible experiences with just like truly incredible people. And I came back to my little town in a politically different state and felt my cup was very filled by these experiences. And I got back and I was faced with a couple of people that immediately had a judgment call to make on what kind of people I must have encountered out in Washington. Okay.
Oh man.
Like, just kind of flippant comments. And I simply kind of smiled and looked at them. I was like, oh no, that wasn't really my experience. And I was talking this through with a friend and I said, I really believe that travel is one of the biggest gifts. Like if you have the ability, and you don't have to get on a plane and fly a few states away. I'm not even saying that. Like if you can get in your car and just leave your community a little bit and let yourself interact with strangers. Because what I said to her, and I'm going to make sure that I call both sides of the spectrum out on this, but for me, because of where I'm at in the comments, I was like, we should not be letting Fox News be our travel guide.
Right.
Right. And so on the flip side, it would be like CNN or whatever, right? Like if you're basing where you go, who you interact with, and like those choices based on like a completely biased or any, frankly, news source, I want to check that a little bit because I had experiences and I clocked them. That's the other thing I would really recommend is like keep a little notebook and just write down the moments of delight that you experience when you're traveling. It's just a special way for me, especially being a people person, right? I reconnect with humanity. I reclaim kind of, and sometimes it's almost like I'm reminded that people that don't think the way I do or that weren't raised the way I am or, literally don't even maybe share some of the same values that they are still there. I can still learn from them. And I can still have beautiful experiences with them. Like it's just, it really opens me up and keeps me open, which is important because for me, it's like an open stance, just generally emotionally, mentally is kind of signifying of hope and trust. And like a closed and clenched one is kind of rooted and grounded in fear. And so when I'm feeling fearful, that's like to me, the fastest way to physically open up is to put myself in the way of those experiences. So
well, certainly that does take a lot of conscious repatterning.
Yeah. Yes.
To use the emotion of fear to then drive you to be more open to love, because that is not what most people do in fear. Kind of like when things are unstable, it brings on the collective fear consciousness.
Yeah.
Right. And especially in small towns where for me, like, it's not like I haven't lived in a small town before, but Banff was probably one of those closest things, but I was in my early 20s.
In Banff?
I lived in Banff.
So that's like a bucket list city for me to visit. I'm so jealous right now. Oh my goodness, Winnie.
Yeah. So, I mean, and living in a tourist town per se, I mean, the oscillation between how small it gets to how big it gets with the travelers that come in really takes a lot of, like, you can really notice it. But I'm pretty sure it's the same sort of concept where when you live in a smaller town, it's like, it's more intense with the energy that you feel because there's less anonymity. There's more like, you probably have to answer the question like, hey, how are you doing? I don't know, 10, 15 times a day. And
Yes.
so learning to, you know what I mean? Like it's just, and people just know your stuff. People want to know your stuff,
Yes.
and that's
All
just
true.
how it is.
Mhm.
And you can't also hide your mood. So, I mean, if you just happen, I don't know, if you happen to bump into me when I'm hungry, or I may not present myself really, really well, and all of a sudden I have a thing. It's like, oh, you better watch out for Winnie, man. She gets hangry,
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Really
I get
quick.
this. I get this. And in fact, like in my town, I actually have said that I will make a conscious choice to not go out in public as much as I can make that choice when I'm feeling particularly spirally or yucky, right? Like, because I know that too. I'm not a good faker. I don't have a good poker face. Like, you will know. And it's really funny. I mean, I have gotten like better at, if someone sees me on the street and I'm not having a great day, and they'll be like, "Hey, Rebecca, how are you?" And I'll be like, I'm just having an okay day. And they really don't know what to do with that. It's not an invitation like to have a big discussion about, but I
Right.
also I'm not much for faking. So I will answer that honestly without like laying all my baggage at their feet, because really, for the most part, when people ask that question, they actually really only want the doing great. How are you? I mean, so I also sometimes like to challenge people. If you're a person that asks that question without a lot of thought, start thinking about it and consider if you really want to know. Like, if you don't really want to know, but just say hello and let it rest, right? These niceties turn into not so niceties when we're not thoughtful and mindful about them. But
True. So I wanted to make sure that I had like a few questions that I had written down here and wanted to make sure I asked them. And maybe to some degree or another, we have probably talked about it, but I wanted to ask the point of question. So like when you talk about helping people live big in small towns, right? How do we hold on to, like, how do you help them to hold on to their dreams in a time when people are just like trying to survive, right?
yeah, well, again, I never want to be flippant about this answer, only because I know that at any given moment, kind of the spectrum of human suffering, it varies widely. And it's kind of that statement, like, we're not all in the same boat. Some of us are in yachts and some of us are in dinghies, right? Like that whole idea that just to be thoughtful about that. But putting that aside, I guess my general answer for this is, I think if you have a specific dream of something that you want to accomplish, I think practically speaking, it's really important to set some sort of action that you can take every single day to move you towards the achievement of that, or the achievement of launching like a minimum viable product of that thing. So again, like, and I sometimes share the story. When I first decided I wanted to build this thing, I had to raise some money to help with the funding of, mostly really what it came down to was the building stuff, the stuff that went inside of the building, because the building itself was just financed. We did that. But when it came to running the nonprofit, every single chair that's in here, could be sponsored or, donated with donor dollars. So when I launched the company in the middle of 2019. And so right after I got my IRS, the tax exemption letter, and I was like, I'm an official thing. Like, people can give us money and deduct it on their taxes, right? That's a huge deal. I made the decision that every single day I was going to tell at least one new person about the vision of what I wanted to see in this building, with the intent of hopefully telling the right people, getting connected to the right people, and getting some partnership support or grant opportunities or whatever it might be. My goal was to raise $150,000. And originally, like, I actually had a chart where I charted this out and I put like a name in a box. So I had an 8x8 grid. So I had 64 boxes on this thing on my wall. So it was literally right behind me in my office every single day. So my goal, at least one new person every single day. So I had 64 boxes. I managed to hit that target in 27 conversations.
Wow.
And what's cool about it, Winnie, is that like, there were a bunch of people that were like, sounds cool, have no idea what you think you're going to do here. And like, I guess good luck. There's a lot of people, and it didn't get anybody that just said like, that's stupid, because people are nicer than that. But a lot of people that were just like, don't get it, don't understand it. But when you meet the first person that really gets it and they're in a position to help you, then the question to that person becomes, Who else needs to know about this? And then it's like a snowball of momentum. And that's what happened with me in this project. It was incredible. So I think, in times of uncertainty, in times where you feel like you're in survival mode, pick a thing that you can do every single day. Keep it small enough that you can do it no matter how frazzled your day gets. And I did. I literally said at least one. And I thought as long as it takes me is how long it takes me, and there were some days I talked to 5 people. So I just think I think there's a practicality of that, like actively moving your dream or your thing forward.
Yeah, absolutely love it. I mean, 2019, like probably within 6 or 7 months of then our whole era where it was a global shift of like how it impacted the world, right? COVID-19 there. And then now this, which is also very momentous in its own way, because, he's impacting the entire world, right? And having a global conversation. And so I'm like, just based on your own story, which congratulations, carrying on with your vision, acting in spite of what others may or may not believe, in your own project. So you have this space, and then how do you feel like, because exactly what you talked about, like, if there's something, a conversation that you love having, if there's something that, you can do with your own gifts and then sharing that with other people, like, so you did that yourself specifically. And so you survived the whole COVID thing, right? Because during that time, I mean, you opened a public space, but then I'm sure that public space was then limited for some certain period of time.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, what is that? Like, you had to endure that. Like, you had to continue during an unstable time, but being able to still live your dream in a big way. Like, so how's that transpired, like, over this period of time for you specifically?
Yeah. So one of the things I talk about a lot when I go to visit communities, and I kind of tell the story of like, so I think individual people and actual spaces, like in this case, my building, they can literally transform communities. I truly, individuals in particular, people are what make things happen. So I actually talk about the fact that what it really takes is a very specific set of humans. There's actually 5 roles that I talk about. And that is how I persevered during COVID-19. It is how I had the fortitude to keep going. It is how I decided to still buy a building at the end of 2020, despite what was happening and despite that serious set of uncertainties. I had cultivated both a support and a challenge network. With those 2 concepts come from Adam Grant, who is an organizational psychologist or sociologist, maybe. I can't remember which one, but he's fantastic. He's like really famous. He's written a bunch of books. He wrote a book called Think Again, which I highly recommend rural folks read. It's just so important. But this idea I had people that were cheering me on, which we always need, but I also had people that would say, but Rebecca, have you thought about this? And have you considered this? And this is what you said you were going to do. Why are you changing your mind now? Right? Like, and all out of love and all out of wanting to see me thrive. It's also managing who gets to hear your story and how early, because I talk a lot about naysayers. I talk a lot about people that are on board. And man, those people, they live everywhere. They live in every community. And in a small town like mine, the very vocal negative people, again, I'm not saying this like they're everywhere in my little town, but every town has them. And so I think instead of being like, how do we get everybody on board? Yeah, I wouldn't waste your precious energy with that. That is never going to work. There will always be people that just don't like it, because part of community means that like, you have access to the things you love, and you over here have access to the things you love. They don't have to look the same. And my bigger message of that is like, let's just agree that the more people that have access to things that they love means more people can call this place home. That's awesome. That's what we should be aiming for, right? Not a homogeny of just like expecting that we're going to only recruit or attract all the people that just like the same things. That doesn't even sound interesting to me, So I think it's an interpersonal and a network management, actually taking control of who you're sharing your message with, making sure that you're not opening yourself up to the criticism of people who don't live lives that inspire you at all. right? Like that's a big one. Like if their life doesn't inspire you, don't let their criticism impact you because it's just an opinion, right? And build up that beautiful network of people. And I'll say too, like I can speak from a true place of this. Like most of the people that really helped me, my parents were here. Of course, I had local contractors, like the physical labor stuff that happened right here. But the mental and emotional load, and still today, how do I continue to show up? How do I get my bucket filled? Most of these people don't live here. They're dear friends from all over the country.
So it's like a global community.
It is a global community. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think what's cool about it. So also these people listening that are rural or like in small towns, we've never had a better opportunity to like have all the beauty and love that can happen and can get fostered in a smaller community and still have access to all the things that can create a rich life if that's what you need, right? I just think that the thing is you don't have to like lower your standards to settle for a small town anymore. It doesn't. And when I say anymore, I simply mean there was certainly a time when there was a much bigger inconvenience tax, if you will, on living in a small place than there is now. I mean, to me, that's just fundamentally true.
Like you mean like the certain trade-offs of living in a smaller town and, versus in a bigger city.
Yes. Yeah. I think that difference, the inconveniences just by a lot of modern technology. I mean, Amazon does 2-day shipping. I don't like stand here and promote Amazon, but I also don't demonize it when it comes to getting things quickly because it makes that inconvenience less burdensome.
Yeah. Especially for certain people who don't have like the same access, to
right. Exactly.
the regular everyday conveniences that some of us may take for granted, like, a car that works, right?
Right.
Or maybe like traveling 100 kilometers an hour would seriously like put a strain on something that needs a major repair that you may not be able to pay for at this very moment or something, like something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And so one of the things that really resonates with me as you're speaking to that I often quite say, like one of the greatest challenges of being a human is being able to honor each other, even though we might not agree.
Yeah. Yep.
And like, we can't I don't think like through the dawn of time, I mean, through every single story that's been shared for centuries and centuries and centuries and centuries, right? Like the Bible's written about it. The Buddhists have written about it, like all the different types of like thought processes that are out there, even the different like thought processes around finances, right? Like there's like, as you know, because you were there, like this infinite banking is one strategy. Buy term, invest the difference is another strategy. We're never going to all agree. Never, ever. Right. But it comes back down to, if we strip all of that away and we didn't have any of the conveniences, and let's just say there's no more internet, it comes back down to community.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And if there's a shortage of food, I mean, or there's a shortage of power, or there's been a natural disaster, it all comes back down to us. So really learning how to be in community and share our gifts is now so much more, it's just so important. And our mental health even.
Yeah.
Like our own sanity.
Yeah, for sure. Like all of these things, it's all interconnected because we're all connected. And that's where we are all in this together. Like, that's the thing. Like, it's this interesting thing where, like you said, sometimes it's a good thought exercise to just, especially I think if you feel really overwhelmed by something and you just take a minute and you sit down somewhere quiet alone if you can, and you just ask yourself the question, what if all of this were taken away? What at my core, what at my, what's true for me? What would I need? What do I have? So I just think, like you said, it's easy to get overcome with the stress of chaos and doubt and fear. And so slowing down and asking ourselves those questions I think it's always helpful. Like you said, it really does come down to mental health too.
Yeah. And what we can control. Like, I mean, so again, can't control what's happening on the outs. Like we can't control what's happening in the politics and the overall impact it has on the overall community, and then right down to how it may impact you as an individual. When it comes to finances, right, I have the right to control. Okay, I can't change what the banks are doing. I can't change what the government is doing in terms of taxes and the banks charging interest and them having the terms and conditions, but I can control my ability to how I manage my cash flow and choose to exercise the infinite banking concept to, to practice more self-reliance. And as you're talking about in smaller communities, it's like we have control over how you can relate with others, right? And how you can share, without needing to rely on, oh, hey, what is the government going to do for me? And I'd really like to add here, because we're coming up on, we've been talking for a bit, is your nonprofit organization. I don't imagine it just is a nonprofit organization that just impacts where you live in North Dakota. Like,
right.
Could you tell us a little bit more about how perhaps, if you're looking to give back, and what Rebecca is talking about really speaks to you, how, like, if I put my dollars with you, how does that help?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the question. So I think there's a couple of ways that, like, just general donations support our work. First of all, our podcasts. Our podcast is one of the ways that we reach. We have, through our podcast, reached 48 of our 50 states and 30 international countries. That's kind of our listener, what we've seen from statistics. And that, to me too, it's super special to just recognize that, like, that is happening from a town of 1,800 people in a farming community in Southeast North Dakota. And that's rad. Like, there's nothing
so
short
rad,
of rad, it's just super, super cool, because I know that not every community is going to have the funds to, like, hire me and come in and speak in their communities. But every single person, pretty much as long as they have a smartphone, can access our podcast and be inspired and be uplifted and hear great stories of great people doing great things everywhere. And that's why it exists. It's why it's been our predominant kind of, I would say, free access thing for the past 4 years, because it's one of the ways we know that we can impact people.
Amazing. So it's like, because I know what it's like to run a podcast show. It's like, it's not the most cost-effective thing in the world. It takes money and dollars.
It does take money. It takes real money to produce a podcast. You've got all your equipment. Like, for me, I've got equipment. I have somebody that actually produces our show. Because there again, like, I shouldn't, there's certain things I should just not do if I can help it. And especially if I can use local people. So I have local people that produce our show. And then I have a virtual assistant who's worked with me for the past 4 years. And she, puts the show notes together. And literally I do this part because this is my part. And then I hand it off to people. And there's a bunch of hands that touch it before it actually becomes an episode. And yes, all of that costs money.
Right. And so those dollars would help, because you interview your folks, and sometimes it could just be like a person in your local area, but it could be someone, like, again, right across the country or from a different country, and you're really highlighting their story and helping them. And it's really on the dime of the nonprofit organization to get that show out there.
It is. Yep. Totally. And a lot of our other kind of the charitable arm of our work, if you will, because we have a lot of fee-for-service stuff, right? Which is common in nonprofits. A lot of that is a little bit more local, but we're working on some new models. I mean, we're working on some new models of how we get our programming out. I just dropped local economic development at the end of 2024. And so that's been a big change for me, as you can imagine, a big change for my, like, the perception of me and the perception of this building in our community. So kind of, I wouldn't say we're pivoting exactly. We're actually getting back more into the root of why I started this thing, but I'm taking some pause and doing that reflecting, kind of like we've been talking about, because I do think I have unique things that I want to offer rural communities. And then, of course, it's just, how does it make the most sense to deploy that? Who can pay for it? Because I still feel very, very strongly that the kind of development that my professional background in organizational development is good at, right? Which is leadership and communication and people skills. Like, how do we help people collaborate better? How do we help people access their creativity and their problem solving better? How do we help people encourage each other? How do we help people start businesses? Like, all of those things are skill sets that I believe every single person on main streets in small towns everywhere should have access to. And we know that there's a funding gap because they're not going to be able to pay the rates that is, suggested of the value of that work. And so there is a funding gap, and that's why we are a nonprofit. So it's now just thinking, like, what is the model that makes the most sense for that? So we're in a bit of a reimagining and rethinking what that should be. Yeah.
Yeah. And as it should. I mean, that's the whole process of like growing and stretching. And now that you've been at it since 2019. And what I really love about this is that you can really get an opportunity here, everyone who's listening, to really get to know Rebecca Undem and the work that she does. And it's different than hoping that the government will follow through on some of these resources for us individuals who really are wanting that and needing that extra step. And so by getting to know exactly how, Rebecca sets herself out there, you get to know exactly where your dollars are going. And so if you feel like you can contribute to what Rebecca's doing so that you can help your community, because maybe that's not your skill set, but you can help support someone who does have the skill set to do those things that you would like to see more of, then go and do that. And of course, visit our show notes to have direct access to Rebecca and what she does. So I just want to take a quick moment. Thank you so much for your time, for being here and sharing your thoughts with us. You are a beautiful person.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for showing up and living, being a person that just really just helps to make this world a better place. We all need that when there's just times of so much different messaging going on, and it helps every person that you come across that can come from a space like you are, just makes this world simply better. And so, tune in again next time, and just thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Winnie.
So glad you leaned in with us on the WinEH podcast. We truly hope you're feeling more informed and empowered to take another step towards optimizing your financial life. Right now, make sure you hit subscribe so you can keep growing and learning with us. Until next time, we wish you prosperity in every area of your life.